Panthers prospects finished with a 2-1-0 record in the Prospect Showcase up in North Carolina. We're going to discuss Sunday's game against the Tampa Bay Lightning and Monday morning's game against the Nashville Predators. And we're going to talk about the mindset of these prospects as well. And we are going to mentally prepare for Media Day and the start of training camp on Wednesday and Thursday, all on today's episode of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Monday, September 19th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at Monoman12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also follow Locked On NHL and Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Still Roden. We'll be covering all the preseason activities around the National Hockey League. So, Cats fans, it's 2-1-0 in the prospect tournament is a pretty good, great place to be, even though wins and losses aren't the main focus of these prospects that up in North Carolina for the Panthers. I mean, habits as well for the Panthers, and the ability to listen to coaches, how you take criticism is really the main takeaways for these coaches, and how to mentally prepare for where these players are on that side, because the brain doesn't really, as far as who players aren't really going to fully develop until really the age of 25, at least for men. So at least for these players, it's a really great opportunity for them to kind of, and be a part of, as TJ Shalot referencing back to my show on Thursday, really learn about what the Florida Panthers way of how they want to develop. And really on the broadcast, they really spoke really about how, when it comes to these players coming in and having a feel of what an NHL locker room is and an NHL culture, versus what they experienced some of these in juniors, and really the different levels, the different speeds. And you're going to have, of course, some growing pains. Of course, in these prospect tournaments as well, you're going to also see a little bit of more breakdowns as well, and more high-scoring games, possibly more penalties as well, because these players aren't polished like when you get up to the professional level. Geordie Kinnear spoke about really how these guys didn't really get a lot of practice together. I mean, really, let's think about it. Only 2 practices for these Florida Panthers players before they play even a game. I mean, some of them have never really been together. I mean, yeah, sure, there is a prospect camp back in July, and then they go their separate ways back to their families, wherever they may go, and then back here, and there, of course, there's a little bit of a gap in between. Of course, there's also the off ice activities that these guys done. They've done a little bit of going on the river and also some cooking as well, together as well. So it's also a great time for these players to bond together as well, get to know each other. But of course, there's also that gap in between, and there's also the putting the skates on only for 2 practices right before going into this tournament. But even then, we really got to be impressed with some of the play from these Panthers prospects. I mean, listen, where the Florida Panthers are, the broadcast mentioned investments. These are investments, and where with the lack of first round picks, the lack of salary cap at least for this year, this is where you got to hit it right on the money for the Panthers if they want to maintain long-term success. Sure, the NHL team has the Alexander Barkovs of the world, now the Matthew Tkachuks of the world, Aaron Ekblad, there in the mix. Sergei Bobrovsky is under contract for 4 more years starting this year. Spencer Knight is coming into form. Anton Lundell is into his second year of developing on the NHL level. So what happens when, and we spoke about last offseason, excuse me, about these players who are getting these 3 to 4 year deals, no more, no less, about the ability to reset and to bring new players in as well in order to fit the culture. And we spoke about Sam Bennett when he had his extension, Sam Reinhart, Anthony Duclair. I know, sure, Anthony Duclair is going to miss the start of the season, but the ability to, if the Panthers do find themselves up with the cap, and of course, which they are right now, that when next season comes around, sure, they can do a little bit of both. Pay a player, but also bring someone up, so you have a little bit of that balance between the farm and the NHL squad, as well as being able to reset the cap every single year for this squad. So it's Bill Zito is trying to play his cards right with this franchise, and of course, a lot of the moves of the first round picks and the buyouts was a product of the previous regime. But the farm, even though nationally it's not ranked the best, we spoke about that more, TJ, last week, that this is really where you have to hit for these Panthers players, and hoping that, and lots of exciting players and a lot of late round players as well. I mean, Josh Davies, especially, it was the player that stood out to me most during this prospect showcase. That is one player that I really highlighted, and also talking about undrafted players as well. One of Matt Guzda, played 2 out of the 3 games. Of course, the third game, which we'll talk about in segment number 3, a little up and down, but still things that I liked that I saw from Matt Guzda there. So it takes time. It takes time, and don't. It's not really to focus on the results, more of the focus of habits, like we spoke about earlier in this segment. So I had a great time watching this from afar. I can only imagine in person with these players, getting around the coaching staff and just hearing the message of what Geordie Kinnear is trying to send to these players. In segment number 2, we are going to talk about the second game between the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning. We're going to discuss game number 2, a Battle of Florida Prospect Edition of the prospect tournament. We're going to talk about that next. But first, we're going to tell you all about BetOnline. And BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your pro and college football needs and sports info this season. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's week 3 games coming up. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use a mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Second segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast on this Monday, September 19th. And we are back to 5 days a week starting this week, with Media Day looming just a few days away, and start of training camp where the players actually hit the ice on Thursday, September 22nd. I will actually be in attendance for Media Day down at the Panthers Ice Den on Wednesday. So Thursday's episode of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast is going to be a very fun one, as we as I tried to share all the sights and sounds of what the players were saying on media day on Wednesday. So Thursday's episode of Locked On Panthers, you don't want to miss that one, that's for sure. So Sunday's game against the Tampa Bay Lightning, the 1 p.m. game, it wasn't the start that we saw from the first game. The first one, a lot of chances going the other way. Matt Gutsta did not start the second one. It was Kobe Hay, and then played the first 2 periods, and then Jari Kikkonen played the third period for the Florida Panthers. So, and really for the Panthers, what I liked was I mentioned Josh Davies. He had a shorthanded chance in the first game. He had a shorthanded chance in the second one once again, and he had a great assist as well in this one as well for the third goal of the game. Gets it to Patrick Giles. Patrick Giles was actually a guy that TJ Shalot spoke about last week, looking to break out. He's in year one of his 2-year AHL contract as well. And another story for the Florida Panthers is Dennis Shisana, really one of the oldest player by a couple of years there, captain at Michigan State, and an opportunity for him to hopefully get an NHL contract. And also got to give credit to Riley Bezo on that second goal, that he was able to create a screen right in front. The camera angle of that goal was the strangest angle, because I thought that Jack LaFontaine of the Tampa Bay Lightning didn't have a screen right in front of him. Weird angle, but they were talking about in the post game interviews, talking about how there was a screen. So I'll trust their judgment there for that one. But Dennis Shisana gets one through, and he earned an A on his sweater. Justin Sordiff, great around the boards, and this dude, very dangerous behind the net. You never know where he's gonna go. Didn't get a goal in any of these games in the prospect showcase, but still found a way to deliver some apples. Worked around the boards, physical, and gets one right to Dennis Shisana right before he converted right from the blue line. And also Xavier Cormier is able to close in on a few rushes from the Tampa Bay Lightning as well. That's something I liked from him as well. Sandis Vilmanis as well. That's another one that I liked from this tournament. Very great on the rush. Did get an empty net goal in this one. Earned it. And Patrick Giles, I mentioned that he got a goal, but really throughout the whole game, I felt that he was gonna get one through, because he was right in front of the net. He was just trying to generate shots. So he found a way. And Ethan Burrows gets the first one. Santu Kanunen, a 7th round pick from the 2018 draft, and Leon Ardsby gets the assist on this one. So really, the Florida Panthers, they weren't off to their start like they were in the first game, went scoreless throughout the first period, and then really the floodgates open as far as the goal scoring came, really until the second period. But hey, you get an opportunity to get people in, and even Kobe Hay, a few breakaway chances for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and he's able to close in, get in the butterfly position, and make some great saves. And also we saw a little bit of the physicality from Tag Bertuzzi. I know Todd Bertuzzi didn't have a long career with the Florida Panthers, but we kind of seen a little bit of the physicality from the family go down to the younger generation of Tag Bertuzzi. So maybe he might be a mainstay for the Florida Panthers / Charlotte Checkers. So a great opportunity for Tag Bertuzzi to possibly play a role in this franchise as well. So pretty cool story that a lot of players that we've seen come throughout the years of the family ties. Of course, the NHL level, we have Matthew Tkachuk, and then for the AHL level, Tag Bertuzzi being part of the mix for the Panthers. Kai Schwitt is also the brother of Cole Schwitt, is also part of this prospect tournament. He didn't play in the second game against the Tampa Bay Lightning, but still hoping for him to have a main role in the AHL side for the Charlotte Checkers as well. So 2-0 for the Panthers. It felt great. And lots of confidence for this team. Geordie Kinnear, like we spoke about earlier, spoke about really how this team really doesn't get a lot of time, but they were able to really get to know each other, and really it's paid off on the ice in at least in the first two games for the Panthers. So lots of exciting play. That's hopefully coming to Bojangles Arena in starting on October 14th, which that will be opening night for the Charlotte Checkers. In segment number 3, we are going to discuss the third game of this prospect showcase. We are going to talk about who stood out in that one as well, and we're going to talk about more of the how goalie Matt Gutsta looked in that third game. We're going to talk about that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Third and final segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast on this Monday, September 19th edition of the show. And before we continue this, before we get into the third segment, I want to congratulate all the teams that participated in the LatAm Cup down in the Coral Springs Ice Den, of the winners as well. The U12 winner, Brazil, U16, Mexico City, U20, Puerto Rico, women's Mexico, men's D2 Egypt, and Division 1 Puerto Rico winning the LatAm Cup. So wish I could have been there down there covering the tournament, but we did have a host on the Locked On Podcast Network, Erica Ayala, who covered the LatAm Cup in person. So if you want to follow her on Twitter, you can at elindsay08. So that's where you can follow her and her work and everything that she has covered throughout that tournament. And for me personally, Puerto Rico winning twice means a little to me, as I'm Puerto Rican. And of course, everything that's going on the island right now with Hurricane Fiona taking out all the power on the island. So my thoughts are with people over there in PR right now for Hurricane Fiona. But let's talk about this third game for the Panthers. And like the fourth line of Panwar, Cormier's, and Yelsma, they were creating steals, and Panwar gets an opportunity right in front of the net. Also an opportunity for Panwar to kind of prove himself as well. A lot of physicality as well, once again. Justin Sordev, even though he drew a penalty in this one, he was not afraid to get in the face of, and the broadcast, and apparently the bench was yelling for during the fight to let him go, but the referees who we saw AHL referees who are calling these prospect tournaments also give credit to these guys. These guys are trying to get their reps in as well, and trying to move up in the officiating ranks as well. So Justin Sordev listen, Justin Sordev, like let's not hold Sordev not getting a goal against them in this tournament, because he was always around the net, around the boards, and just creating opportunities for his teammates right in front of the net. And including the first goal of the game, for the first and one and only goal for the game, getting it to Keppen right on the doorstep. And of course, the Nashville Predators have one of the top goalie prospects right now in the entire NHL. Yaroslav Askarov, drafted in the top 10 a few years back. So it really a tough challenge for the Panthers all around. But really, lot of rushes going the other way for the Panthers. Matt Gutsta. It's funny because I spoke about how don't let 4 goals deceive you for Matt Gutsta. There's been a lot of highlight reel saves for Matt Gutsta, including some redirections, getting in the butterfly position, laying on his stomach as well, and making some pad saves. But the 5th one, really can't excuse that one for Matt Gutsta. But there was quite a few times where he was just left all alone, right on, and went 5-hole on Matt Gutsta. But there was one where a little bit of trouble with rebound control on the 5th one, but was able to kind of rebound a few times throughout the game. So really, really for Mac, 6 goals is a lot. Part of me wanted Geordie Kinnear to pull him after the 5th one, because don't want the guy to be embarrassed out there. But really, also this is a learning opportunity for someone like Matt Good. So yeah, undrafted out of the OHL from the Barrie Colts, but still, you know, the team around him was they kind of let him down a little bit. There are a lot of rushes, but I'm sure the team will be when they talk in the locker room. Hey, there'll be a lot of conversations like, "Hey, my bad, man. Sorry that we allowed so many rushes on you." But of course, but there were some control issues for Matt Gusta as well. Kalisti and Patrick Giles on a transition kind of lost their man, and then right behind the net, a cutting Preds player right in front of Matt Gusta, and a little bit of undisciplined play as well, like after the whistles as well. But Josh Davies, that's a name that we've mentioned a lot, has sneaky speed. It was able to draw a penalty cutting right in front of the net, and giving the Florida Panthers a power play opportunity. And of course, the Panthers are going to get the Panthers, and just like their opposition, have gotten a lot of power play opportunities throughout this tournament. Of course, like we said, positionally sound. That this is what both teams are. This is why they do this tournament to begin with, to learn from these. You're going to make your mistakes. One player that I haven't mentioned really at all throughout the first 3 games, Brayden Hache, 7th round pick, who is a player that I'm rooting for as well, because he's been very open as well about mental health and all that stuff. Had a great interview with Doug Plagans about I believe during the Bell Let's Talk, which was back in January, talking about mental health issues, and rooting for Brayden Hache, and really great on the PK during the second period. Creates a block right in front of the net, and then is able to have a great zone exit in order for the Panthers to eliminate any opportunities for the Nashville Predators right in front of the net. And also, it's funny because you might see on the box score 4 goals given up by the Panthers in that third period, but a lot of energy really in the first 2 minutes, and really the Florida Panthers really lost that energy really a little bit later, as the goals were starting to pile on for Matt Gusta and company. A lot of second chances as they were getting right in front of the net. The Askarov was pulled from the game after the second period, but lots of chances in front, and sort of was that guy who was continuing to set up his teammates right in front. And once again, growing pains for these Florida Panthers players right in front, and also Keppen, beautiful setup to Cormier on a power play, even though they were down big. Still, even though it was raining goals for the Nashville Predators, the Florida Panthers were, of course, because these players are trying to make an AHL roster. Some of them who aren't under contract, or players who are already signed their ELCs are trying to make the NHL roster. Because on the broadcast, they also spoke about how they asked this question on the broadcast: is there a specific age that a player is supposed to be on an NHL roster in this or in this place? And the obvious answer was no. There isn't an age where a player is expected to be where. Because of course you see number 1 overall picks at times sign their ELCs and they're immediately on the NHL roster. I mean, we see a perfect example with Aaron Ekblad. Right out of his ELC, he signs right away with he goes to the Panthers right away. Different situation with Jonathan Huberdeau. He doesn't join the Panthers until the 2012-2013 season for the Panthers. So everyone's development curve is a little different based on where they're at. Someone like Justin Sordiv is a player that I don't expect him to play right away on the Panthers. May as early as probably next year is where I expect someone like Justin Sordiv to be. Also, Evan Noss, watching him wear the number 52, that's not Mackenzie Weegar, was kind of strange to see, kind of in this tournament. But Evan Noss was a player that really I didn't hear much of his name at all really throughout his this tournament, but he wasn't making really any critical mistakes. But usually the saying is for defensemen is if you don't hear your name really, that you're doing your job and doing what you need to do. And that's really the impression I got really from Evan Noss throughout this tournament. And this is the defense core is very thin in this for this team. Of course, we spoke about Max Godon and John Ludwig dealing with injuries, and really it's going to depend on some of the players that the Panthers draft and get in the farm as players who are trying to make their way up. I mean, Evan Noss was a second-round pick from last year. The first 2 picks for the Florida Panthers in the 3rd round were both defensemen. So this is where the Panthers really need to, and this is where they need to try to really be patient, but also make sure that these guys are progressing at a level that they're not being rushed as well right to the NHL roster. Because of course, sure, there are some 2-way contracts on the team. Sure, there's some older guys on 1-year deals. And the guys on 1-year deals puts less pressure on these guys in Charlotte right now. So that is the mindset with all of this, with all these short-term signings right now for the Panthers. And then, hey, next year this will be kind of the year where that will be the year where you might see more of the guys coming in. But really for the Panthers' current NHL squad, really the players who are on the younger side who are trying to make their way, you see like the Lucas Carlsons of the world being a part of it. Even Grigory Denisenko and Alexei Heponiemi, those are really the guys to really expect to be on the NHL roster. Who knows? Who knows? Justin Sordiv could develop so well down in Charlotte and could accelerate his opportunity to be part of the NHL roster. But let's temper the expectations as well of kind of like the game speed that these guys experience in this prospect tournament and down in Charlotte to what they're going to experience in the future as well. And putting on the actual sweater that says the actual logo of the team, versus a different one, knowing that is what drafted, there's something different about that. When you go to your locker room, you see your name on the back of the jersey, and you see that it's associated with the team that you are a part of. And that in itself is just think about it. Think about it as if you're going into that locker room and seeing that, and just thinking that this is a great opportunity for X player to really prove that you can be part of the solution for this franchise, not part of the problem as well. Because every team has problems and every team has solutions as well. So that is at least what would go through my mind if I were to enter the locker room and see the sweater and my name on the back. But just think about what these players would experienced this weekend, as they now they will probably go their separate ways. Some of them might go back to junior. Some of them might not even be part of the AHL roster. But what we do have is Geordie Kinnear having an impression now on these players. And now, even if they're not a part of the Charlotte Checkers, that they have an opportunity to bring some of these players back next year, and to hopefully for them to create another opportunity to make the roster. And who knows what kind of lasting impression that some of these players will have, especially post practice. Who is going to be the guy who is going to go to the coach's office just to have a little chat about creating a relationship as well? Of course, the play on the ice has a lot to do with it as well, of whether you're going to be promoted or not, but also asking the coach, what do you need out of me? What is it that you need me to do? And it takes a lot of initiative out of these young guys in order to try to be the best player and man off the ice in order to succeed on both those levels. So really encouraging weekend. 2-1-0 was the record for the Panthers in the prospect showcase up in North Carolina. And, once again, the results aren't the end all be all, but the players and the experience really is really the biggest takeaway for these guys. So I'm excited personally for them, and hopefully we can see these guys on an NHL roster soon, hopefully in a Florida Panthers sweater. So thank you guys for listening to this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Tomorrow on the Locked On Panthers podcast, we'll be bringing in Ian McLaren, the host of the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast, for another crossover edition, preseason edition of Locked On Panthers. That'll be our fifth crossover of the offseason / preseason of division rivals. So if you haven't been able to tune into the other ones, you can subscribe on the YouTube and the podcast, and you'll find all of them there. So in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Fantasy Hockey and Locked On NHL. We'll be covering all the preseason activities around the National Hockey League. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure to listen to today's episode of Locked On NHL. Locked On NHL gives you a 30-minute podcast on all things National Hockey League every Monday through Friday. Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.